All right, friends and neighbors, welcome to another networking video. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do a DHCP build on Linux. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I am going to do this real time, and so you'll see all the steps that I make and the mistakes I make too. So I'm not going to edit this unless I do something really, really silly or something really, really delays me. So I might have to cut it for length. But other than that, we're going to do everything right here. So let's get started with our clones. So I've named these the client and the server, not because of what they have currently installed, but just helps me keep them straight later on. So that's our server, and we'll go ahead and do our client, or the machine that's going to act as our client. Okay. Now the first thing that we'll do is sort of take a look at our current configuration. And we can see that both of them are going to be set up on the NAT interface for our hypervisor. And what we have to remember about that is that there's a built-in DHCP server. And so I guess what I'll do right now is show you the only really piece of preparation that I did for this was that, whoops, that's not what I want, is that I have this host-only network, which is what we're going to do. And we're going to make sure that the DHCP server is off for that. So take a look at those. We can see that right here. And on the host-only network, we want to make sure that we are not using a DHCP service there, because our whole point of our build is to set up a DHCP server. And so we don't want to compete with the hypervisors. All right, so other than that, we're okay, we're ready to go. So I'm going to power up my virtual machine, and we might as well power up the client too. Now, if I wasn't root, I would have to do sudoing and things like that, so I'll just be aware of that. Let's see, what do we want to make sure that we look at? All right, so I'm going to be building a DHCP server. And so the first couple of things that we want to do is we want to go ahead and install. Oops, not you, how about yum? So we'll do that. Now, the minute we do this, there are some things that are automatically installed, and there is an example config file that we can take a look at. Let's see. There we go. Good gracious. All right. And let's do the path while we're here. So there's the path, and let's do more on the DHCP d dot good night config dot example. Oh my goodness. Okay. So this is the configuration file that has a lot of the examples in there. There are some base configurations. We're actually going to use some of this, but we're just going to make our own definition. So this is just I just went here with all of that silliness to make sure that you realize that in this location, we have some config examples, and you can use as a model, use these as a model for your config. But where we're going to go to build this thing is here. And what I'm going to edit is the DHCPD.clnf. So, okay, so there's two or three things that I want to point out as we're going on here. And one is that we've got a global area for the config that I'm going to do some editing in there. And then we've got our address space specific portion. So we're going to do this first. So we can do, so when I'm outside of any curly braces that are defined, that's sort of my global area. And I'll add a name server here. Now, obviously, this is just a temp build, right, or a fakey fake. So you would not use that as your DH or DNS. And we'll pick a default lease time, spelling counts. Oops. All right, and the max. So these are just some, common examples that we sometimes see. Oh, I don't know. Let's do 2400. Sure, why not? And then we'll make this the definitive, the authoritative DHCP server. Or again, spelling counts. Why didn't you tell me that I spelled that wrong? All right, let's make a subnet declaration. And the one that I will use is, we'll use a class B, because that way we can differentiate it from what the hypervisor might do and from the very common boring 192 addresses. So we'll pick something kind of fun like this. And we'll do a net mask. And before you get crazy on me, I know that it's a class C net mask, but what the heck? I want to do a class C net mask with a class B address. And we'll do our curly braces. Now we want to do some of the options that might be associated with this particular subnet. And a very common one would be the range of addresses that I want to give out. And so I will give out, 50 to 59. So that'll be pretty clear if we fall inside that range. Now, because this is a particular subnet, right? A router would live in that particular subnet, or the default gateway. So we'll provide a router for this particular subnet. 254 is always a good number. And I think that's all I want to do for right now. All right. So very good. So we've done that, but we really haven't done everything that we need to do for this particular server. And so let's go ahead and start the DHCP service, right? We did the config file, but that doesn't mean anything if we don't run the server. So we'll do system control, oops, DHCP.service. And we'll start that guy up there. Oh dear. Oh, you know what? Let's do something else too. Let's do a DHCP config. Whoops. Config test. There we go. Ah, okay. So it wouldn't start. So there we go. I told you I was a terrible typist. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this in the video because it's a really good example for you. You can see right here in the middle of that I've got this, right along this line here, I've got this typo. So let's go ahead and fix that, and then we'll try and run it again. Oh, stop it. Oops. So we'll do that, and let's do that, and that, and that. That's not going to work either. There we go. Let's see. Any other? Well, I'm sure we'll find out here in a second. So we'll do our config test. Oh, come on. All right, what did I do there? Oh. Jeez. Good gracious me. So let's try that. Hey, look at that. All right. Now we've got this other error here. It says no subnet declaration for config test no IP version 4 addresses. And that's because I've set up this network for an interface. Well, I don't have an interface on that particular network. So let's fix that too. Jeez. There we go. So my adapter is ENS33 common if you're going to do CentOS on VMware, or really any virtual machine, I guess. So let's do that. And tab is your friend, of course. And if config ENS33. There we go. Now we can see that right now I'm set up for DHCP. So we're going to get rid of this. And we're going to say we want to be static to begin with. We want to be on boot, so that's good. But let's add some stuff here. So we'll do, we want to have an IP address. And we'll make that obviously on the network that we're sitting on. And we'll do a net mask. Let's try and spell it right this time. Not 0. And we'll do the gateway. And this will be, of course, be the same one that we put in our DHCP config, but there we go. All right, name servers don't go in here. And now let's, rather than fight with things at this point, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move my, my VM to my host-only network. And we know right now that there is no DHCP server there. And I'm going to go ahead and move this one as well. There we go. All right. Now, theoretically, the client will only be able to get an IP address from my server. But we're going to see here in a second that I've got a couple of other things that I probably ought to fix, but they're broken on purpose right now. Okay, so let's take a look at our address. That's not going to work. All right. So very good. We have no address right now. So let's bring up our interface. Well, we'll bring it down. We'll shut it down. This is one of the ways you can shut down an interface. And then we'll bring it back up. And hopefully it reads the file and pulls the address. I like ifconfig. You use IPA. There we go. So we are 172.31.99.1, which is what I put in the file. Very good. Now, here we've got a DHCP client that I just moved from the NAT interface as well. So let's, we'll do an if down, why not? Oops. There we go. Now remember that my range of addresses was 50 to 59, but there's something that I've left out here. We can see that my client is having a little bit of trouble. So it's trying, but it's not able to pull an address. And the reason for that is that I have not allowed connections to this particular server. So, so what we're going to do is make some adjustments to our firewall. So here we go. And so I don't forget anything. Spelling counts. So we're going to add the ports that we need for the DHCP server. Now these will be client connections to the DHCP server, so I don't need 68 at this point. And how's my spelling on this one? Looks okay. And let's add TCP while we're at it, just because. So let's check the status of our service really quick. Oh dear. Let's see what we got. Well, let's see if we can go ahead and start our service. We didn't get a warning before. Did I actually start it? I think I fixed those errors. Maybe I didn't start it. I don't know. Okay. So we fixed the errors with a config file. Remember to run the doggone service. And let's take a look at our client. So let's do this. Hey, look at that. Okay, and we'll, whoops. There we go. So we pulled a 172.31.99.50 address, which is from the range that we configured in our file here. Where is it? Not this one, this one. All right, so that was right in this range here. Okay, so now let's do one more thing before we're done here. Let's add something that's specific to a particular host. Now I'm going to do this outside of my subnet declaration, because if I'm going to set up reservations based on a particular MAC address, you don't want them inside the range of addresses that you're going to be offering up. So we are going to do something specific to a host. Let me see here. Yeah, we'll just we'll say something like that. By the way, this kind of configuration is similar to what you might do on, say, a Cisco router. It's similar. It's not exactly the same. All right, so let's do one other thing here. So what I want to do is a reservation based on the MAC address that I see here for this client. So I'm going to take a second. We're going to write this down. So 000C, where'd it go? 29190C10. Okay. So we'll go back over to our server now, and we'll say that we want that particular MAC address to get a particular IP address here in a second. So, whoops, 0C10. Hopefully that's right. Remembering our semicolons. And we're going to do a fixed address. And this will be in that subnet, but outside of the range. So we'll do 60. There we go. And we'll close the curly braces. Okay. Now I've rewritten part of my config file. Let's see if that works. So to get our client to do what we want it to, let's check in on another command, which is DHClient. So DHClient is the command, the good old man page. Now this obviously is pretty straightforward, right? It's a command line utility for DHCP clients, but I want to go all the way down to some of the options, and this is the one that we're going to use right here, DHCP client or DHClient-R, which releases the client and is supposed to not request a lease. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll do DHClient-R because we don't want it to be associated with the old address that it had. Now, theoretically, if this client was to reboot or the interface were to go down and come back up, he would get the IP address that I wanted to, or wanted him to have based on the MAC address. So let's see what the address is right now. So we were at 9950, and now we don't have an address. So that's really what I was hoping to see. We don't have an address at all. And we can see that it killed the client process and removed this old file out there, the process ID file. So let's go ahead and run the DHCP client program. And theoretically, it's going out and asking for an address. And let's see what address. Our client does not want to change its IP address. So what do we need to do? What do we need to think about? Well, I did change the config file here, right? But what I didn't do was restart the service to get it to reread the file. So what we're going to do now is restart the service. There we go. And let's try our client again here. Maybe I should have released it again, but we'll see. There we go. And we can see that we just pulled 172.31.99.60. And that's it. So pretty straightforward build, but let's remind ourselves about a couple of things. We installed the service, right? Did a yum install of the DHCP server. We configured our file. We ran the file, or ran the service. Jeez. Right? We did that. We updated our firewall rules to allow DHCP requests to come in. We are sitting on a host-based or a host-only network that does not have a DHCP server on it. And we use the DHCP or DH client-R and DH client commands to refresh our IP addresses. Once we made changes to the config file, we had to restart the service to get that to be read so that the clients could get the updated information that we needed. And I think that'll about do it. Well, hopefully this will help with your builds. And remember, this is networking. You can do this. Oh, and may your packets always reach their destinations.